The glitz and glamour of Hollywood hide a dark truth, one that even its brightest stars couldn't escape. Henry Fonda, a man whose on-screen presence commanded respect, was silently drowning in a world of betrayal, power struggles, and gut-wrenching battles that nearly shattered his soul. His journey from an ordinary Midwestern boy to an embattled Hollywood icon wasn't just about talent. It was a story of resilience, heartbreak, and a system that nearly chewed him up and spit him out. But what exactly pushed this legendary actor to his breaking point? And why did Hollywood work so hard to cover it up? Born on May 16, 1905, in Grand Island, Nebraska, Henry James Fonda came from a lineage that stretched back centuries. His ancestors, originally from Genoa, Italy, fled persecution and eventually settled in America in the early 1600s, playing a role in shaping the country's early history. But despite this rich heritage, Henry's upbringing was simple. His father worked in advertising and printing, and the family followed Christian Science, a belief system that prioritized prayer over medical treatment. This upbringing instilled a quiet, introspective nature in young Henry, a trait that would later shape the kinds of characters he played on screen. But one harrowing childhood event changed him forever. In 1919, at just 14 years old, Henry witnessed something no child should ever see: the brutal lynching of Will Brown during the Omaha race riots. A frenzied mob, fueled by hatred, burned and hanged an innocent man, and Henry was there to see it unfold in real time. The horror of that night left an unshakable mark on him. It wasn't just a moment of shock, it was a defining experience that shaped his worldview. He carried that trauma into adulthood, and it would later influence the roles he chose. Men who stood up for justice, who fought against corruption, who wouldn't back down. Despite the weight of this experience, acting was never part of Henry's plan. Initially, he wanted to be a journalist. After graduating from Omaha Central High School in 1923, he pursued journalism at the University of Minnesota. But financial constraints forced him to juggle multiple jobs, and after 2 years, he was forced to drop out. With no prospects in sight, he returned to Omaha, desperately searching for work in journalism, only to hit dead ends. Then fate intervened. A family friend, Dodie Brando, mother of future Hollywood legend Marlon Brando, saw something in Henry. She encouraged him to audition for a play at the Omaha Community Playhouse. He had never stepped foot on stage before, but something about the experience captivated him. At first, he was awkward, unsure of himself. But as rehearsals went on, he found himself drawn to the craft in a way he had never felt about anything else. The stage became his sanctuary, a place where he could lose himself in the stories of others. His father was skeptical. Acting wasn't a real career. But when he saw Henry perform, something changed. He recognized his son's undeniable talent, and for the first time, he saw the flicker of something bigger. Encouraged, Henry made a life-altering decision. In 1928, he left Omaha and moved to New York City to pursue acting professionally. It was there, in the world of struggling artists, that he met two people who would forever shape his life: James Stewart and Margaret Sullivan. Joining the University Players Guild, a summer stock theater in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, Henry took on small roles, working tirelessly to improve his craft. One of his standout performances in The Jest showcased his naturalistic acting style, something rare in an era of theatrical exaggeration. Hollywood actors were known for their dramatic flourishes, but Henry had something different, an authenticity that made audiences believe in his characters. This realism set him apart, and soon he was no longer just another hopeful actor struggling for recognition. But it wasn't just his career that was changing. Henry found love with Margaret Sullivan, a fellow actor from the theater troupe. They married in 1931, but their relationship was short-lived, lasting only 2 years. Though their romantic connection faded, they remained close friends, bound by their shared passion for acting. Around the same time, Henry's bond with James Stewart solidified. Despite being polar opposites, Stewart was conservative while Henry leaned liberal. Their friendship stood the test of time, lasting throughout their lives. As Henry's stage presence grew, Broadway took notice. He reprised his role from The Jest for professional audiences, and soon, Hollywood came knocking. By 1935, after enduring years of economic hardship during the Great Depression, Henry finally got his break. He landed his first major film role in The Farmer Takes a Wife, a moment that changed everything. Audiences fell in love with his quiet strength, and suddenly he was making $3,000 a week, an unimaginable sum for someone. His second film, I Dream Too Much, 1935, cemented his place in the industry. The New York Times declared him the most likable of the new crop of romantic juveniles. Hollywood had officially found its next star, but Henry was about to prove he was more than just a charming leading man. In The Trail of the Lonesome Pine, 1936, the first outdoor Technicolor film, he showcased a deeper side, one that made people truly believe in the characters he portrayed. By the late 1930s, he had established himself as one of Hollywood's most promising stars. Then came the role that changed everything. In 1939, he played the young Abraham Lincoln in Young Mr. Lincoln, a film that would mark the beginning of his legendary partnership with director John Ford. Henry's portrayal of Lincoln wasn't grandiose or overly dramatic. Instead, he brought a quiet dignity and raw sincerity to the role, making Lincoln feel like a real flesh and blood person. This performance was a turning point. Hollywood now saw Henry Fonda as more than just a promising newcomer. He was a force to be reckoned with. But just as his career was reaching new heights, the darker side of Hollywood began to reveal itself. Behind the scenes, power-hungry studios controlled their actors with an iron grip, dictating every aspect of their careers and personal lives. Henry, with his independent spirit, wasn't one to be easily manipulated. He fought for creative control, refused to take on roles that didn't align with his artistic vision, and challenged the rigid studio system that sought to keep actors in check. This resistance came at a price. One brutal confrontation on set nearly derailed everything. During the filming of a high-stakes project, tensions between Henry and the film's director reached a boiling point. A disagreement over a pivotal scene escalated into a physical altercation, one that Hollywood insiders worked tirelessly to bury. But this wasn't just a single moment of conflict. It was the culmination of years of tension, power struggles, and silent battles that Henry had endured. Hollywood's polished exterior masked a ruthless industry where even its brightest stars were expendable. Despite the setbacks, Henry refused to back down. His resilience, talent, and unwavering dedication to his craft solidified his status as one of the greatest actors of his generation. But the fight was far from over. The battle between artistic integrity and industry control was just beginning. And as Henry's career continued to rise, so did the stakes. What happened next would push him to the edge, forcing him to make choices that would define not only his career, but his legacy. The moment Henry Fonda stepped onto the set of The Grapes of Wrath, he knew this role would define him. Playing Tom Joad, a man struggling to keep his family together during the Great Depression, wasn't just another job. It was personal. His performance was raw, filled with the desperation and quiet resilience of a man beaten down by life, but still standing. The film struck a nerve with audiences, and his portrayal earned him his first Academy Award nomination. But behind the success, Fonda felt the weight of Hollywood's expectations pressing down on him. The industry celebrated his ability to bring characters to life, but few knew the personal sacrifices he made to stay at the top. Fonda had a unique ability to embody a sense of justice, making him the perfect fit for westerns. In Jesse James, he played Frank James with a quiet nobility that audiences admired, leading to a successful sequel, The Return of Frank James. But Fonda wasn't just content with playing heroes. He wanted to challenge himself. In My Darling Clementine, he portrayed Wyatt Earp, a hardened lawman trying to maintain order in the chaotic Old West. And in The Oxbow Incident, he tackled the terrifying reality of mob justice, a film that forced audiences to confront the consequences of blind vengeance. It was a role that hit close to home for him, echoing the lynching he had witnessed as a teenager. But nothing could have prepared audiences for what came next. In Once Upon a Time in the West, he stunned the world by playing against type, a merciless killer with cold blue eyes and a terrifyingly calm demeanor. Fans were shocked. How could the noble Henry Fonda transform into such an unfeeling monster? But that was his power. He could become anyone, even someone completely unrecognizable from the man audiences thought they knew. Beyond westerns, Fonda gave one of his most unforgettable performances in 12 Angry Men, where he played a lone juror standing against a room full of men ready to convict without question. It was a slow-burning, intense performance, one that mirrored his own personal beliefs about fairness and justice. He didn't rely on dramatic outbursts or showy performances. Instead, his quiet strength and unwavering conviction made the film an instant classic. Just as his career reached new heights, the world changed, and Fonda couldn't ignore it. When World War II broke out, he knew he couldn't just sit back and play pretend war on a Hollywood set. On August 22, 1942, at the age of 37, he enlisted in the U.S. Navy, not as an officer, which his education would have allowed, but as an ordinary seaman. He wanted to earn his place. His commitment was unwavering, and within a year, he had risen to lieutenant junior grade, serving as an air combat intelligence officer aboard the USS Curtis. He played a crucial role in key battles, including the Mariana Islands and Iwo Jima, and his work in air operations planning earned him the Bronze Star. He had proven himself in ways that no film role ever could. But war changes a person, and when he returned to Hollywood in 1945, he wasn't the same man. The things he had seen, the loss he had experienced, it hardened him. His family noticed the difference first. Jane and Peter Fonda would later describe their father as emotionally distant, a man who found it difficult to express affection. Jane recalled feeling like she had to be perfect just to earn his love, while Peter admitted that their father never told them, "I love you," until much later in life. His marriage to Frances Ford Seymour suffered under the strain. Already struggling with depression, she found Fonda's cold demeanor unbearable. Their relationship ended in the most tragic way imaginable. She took her own life in 1950. It was a wound that never fully healed. Professionally, the late 1940s proved challenging. Hollywood was changing, new stars were rising, and Fonda found himself struggling to find the right roles. Rather than accept lesser offers, he turned back to the stage. In 1948, he took on the lead role in Mr. Roberts, a play about a naval officer longing for action in World War II. It was a story that resonated deeply with him, reflecting his own frustrations during his time in the service. The play was an enormous success, running for over 3 years with more than 1,000 performances. His performance won him a Tony Award, proving that despite the industry's shifting tides, Henry Fonda was still one of the finest actors of his generation, but Hollywood wasn't done with him yet. The collaboration between Henry Fonda and director John Ford had already produced some of the greatest films of all time. Together, they had crafted The Grapes of Wrath, My Darling Clementine, and more, films that shaped the very fabric of American cinema. Fonda's quiet power as an actor, combined with Ford's mastery of visual storytelling, made their work together unforgettable. But behind the scenes, their relationship was far from perfect. Tensions brewed between them, a rivalry simmering beneath years of mutual respect. And one moment would push their relationship past the breaking point. But what happened between Fonda and Ford? And how did it leave one of Hollywood's greatest partnerships shattered beyond repair? When The Grapes of Wrath debuted in 1940, it wasn't just another film, it was a gut punch to audiences everywhere. Adapted from John Steinbeck's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, the film painted a haunting picture of a family fighting to survive in the Great Depression. Henry Fonda's portrayal of Tom Joad was mesmerizing, a quiet storm of resilience that left an unforgettable mark. His performance earned him an Academy Award nomination, but this wasn't just about accolades. The film resonated deeply, pulling in over $1.1 million in its first year, an astronomical figure at the time. Director John Ford took home the Oscar for Best Director, cementing the film as more than a cinematic achievement. It became a powerful statement on justice, endurance, and the human spirit. 6 years later, Ford and Fonda reunited for My Darling Clementine, a film that redefined the Western genre. This time, Fonda stepped into the boots of Wyatt Earp, bringing a mix of quiet authority and undeniable gravitas to the legendary lawman. Ford's connection to the story ran deeper than most knew. He had actually spoken with the real Wyatt Earp years earlier, absorbing first-hand details of the famous gunfight at the OK Corral. He used those recollections to craft a film that blended myth and history so seamlessly it felt almost poetic. But behind the polished performances and masterful storytelling, tension simmered between the actor and director. Ford's temper was infamous, his demands relentless. Fonda, always the consummate professional, respected Ford's genius but detested his methods. Their uneasy partnership continued until it finally exploded in 1955, during the making of Mr. Roberts. For Fonda, Mr. Roberts wasn't just another role, it was personal. The Broadway play, based on Thomas Hagen's novel, had been a career-defining moment for him. Opening in 1948, it ran for an astonishing 1,157 performances, with Fonda delivering a performance so powerful it earned him a Tony Award. The story of Lieutenant Douglas Roberts, a naval officer trapped on a mundane cargo ship while yearning for combat, resonated with Fonda's own military service. He had lived that reality, and he brought authenticity to the role that no one else could. But Hollywood had doubts. By the early 1950s, Fonda was pushing 50 and had been absent from the silver screen for years. Studio executives wanted fresh faces: Marlon Brando, William Holden, anyone but Fonda. But Ford wouldn't budge. He knew no one else could embody Roberts the way Fonda could. However, even after securing the role, Fonda found himself fighting another battle, this time against the studio itself. Warner Brothers wanted Mr. Roberts to appeal to the widest possible audience, meaning changes were inevitable. Darker elements of the story were softened, particularly the tyrannical nature of Captain Morton. Even the film's technical approach shifted. Originally planned for 3D using Warner Superscope, the format was scrapped mid-production in favor of CinemaScope, adding further complications. But the real storm was brewing behind the scenes. and at its center was the volatile Ford. John Ford was a Hollywood legend, but on set, he was a force of nature, brilliant, unpredictable, and sometimes outright cruel. His directorial style was a battlefield, and his actors were often the casualties. One of the most infamous moments in his career unfolded on the set of Mr. Roberts in 1954. Fonda, deeply invested in maintaining the integrity of the story, had concerns about Ford's script alterations. He voiced them to producer Leland Hayward, who arranged a meeting with Ford. It was supposed to be a discussion. It turned into something far worse. As Fonda laid out his concerns, Ford, drink in hand, listened in silence. Then, without warning, he stood up and punched Fonda square in the face. Just like that, years of collaboration and friendship were obliterated. Ford later offered a half-hearted apology, but the damage was irreversible. For Fonda, this wasn't just about a physical blow. It was the culmination of years of pent-up frustration. He never forgave Ford, never worked with him again. And with that single act of violence, one of Hollywood's most iconic actor-director partnerships came to an abrupt and bitter end. But Ford's wrath wasn't reserved for Fonda alone. James Cagney, who played Captain Morton, found himself in the crosshairs as well. The tension began before filming even started. When the two men first met at the airport, Ford greeted Cagney with an ominous warning. "We're going to tangle asses." It wasn't a joke. Ford had a history of testing actors, pushing them to their limits. Cagney, however, wasn't the kind of man to back down. On the very first day of shooting, he arrived slightly late. That was all Ford needed. What followed was a relentless power struggle, with Ford using every trick in the book to break Cagney's spirit. He belittled him in front of the crew, forced unnecessary retakes, and created an environment of hostility. Cagney, a veteran of Hollywood's toughest productions, refused to be intimidated. But even he later admitted that working under Ford was one of the most miserable experiences of his career. Eventually, Ford's erratic behavior spiraled so far out of control that he was removed from the film. Mervyn LeRoy stepped in to finish the job, bringing a much-needed sense of stability to the production. When Mr. Roberts finally hit theaters, it was a triumph. Audiences embraced it, critics praised it, and Fonda's performance, despite the chaos behind the scenes, shone through. But for those involved, the scars remained. Fonda's career, however, didn't stall. If anything, the hardships only refined his craft, adding layers of depth to his performances. Over the years, he delivered some of the most compelling roles of his career, from the quietly defiant juror in 12 Angry Men to the sinister, ice-cold villain in Once Upon a Time in the West. In each role, there was something unspoken, a weight behind his eyes, a lifetime of battles fought both on-screen and off. His journey wasn't just about Hollywood, it was about survival, resilience, and an unwavering dedication to his craft. Hollywood has never been short on drama, but some stories linger long after the cameras stop rolling. The legacy of Henry Fonda and John Ford is one of brilliance and brutality, of masterpieces born from turmoil. And in the end, perhaps that's the real story of Hollywood, where art and conflict collide, creating something unforgettable.